Hi again. This is me again, and I had another subject to talk about. One of my primary interests is the World War II era, 1931 to 1955, and I explain it in this way, and that is that the Japanese Empire began to expand in earnest in search of raw materials and resources, both labor and something coming out of the ground to fuel their military industrial complex and continue their expansion into the Asian mainland. And that was with, of course, in 1931, the Mukden incident, expansion into Manchuria, the establishment of a puppet government in Manchuria, which they renamed as Manchukuo. I think it was Emperor Puyi, the last Chinese emperor, who was made emperor of that country. Then, of course, the Japanese army, Japanese military began to expand northwards to north of the China Wall and began to establish puppet governments and alliances with outlaw bands and other organizations to begin to make incursions past the China Wall into China itself. By July 1937, Japan was at war with China. This was not a declared war. They called it the China Incident. And it continued to remain that way until 1945 when it ended. Uh, it was Japan's expansion in the East and eventually seeing itself as not possibly continuing onward unless it got some renewed sources of especially petroleum products, say from Indonesia, what is presently called Indonesia, and those places, and to find some way to at least politically neutralize the U.S. Navy in the Pacific. They began to realize that that was not possible, so that they would have to attack us directly. And of course, they did that on the morning of December 7th, 1941. This was part of a joint operation. Many other operations immediately started with the invasion of the Malaysian Peninsula, which ended in February of 1942, in which the Japanese handed the British Empire the worst defeat in its military history. They not only defeated a military force that was more than twice their size. As a matter of fact, the campaign hadn't even completed, and the Japanese had already withdrawn 15,000 of their men to send them back to Manchuria and China. But also they were able to capture most of these people. The numbers are always uncertain. It depends on what history you read. You get as few as 75,000 prisoners of war and as many as 130,000. The dead and wounded are always uncertain as well. It may have been as high as 12,000 dead and wounded for the Allied forces. I should say the British Imperial forces. And for the Japanese, it's unknown. But one thing is for sure, they did it with a force less than half the size of who they were fighting. And they pulled off the beginning of the end of the British Empire in the East. This was, of course, a result of their military actions. Now, the United States lost its imperial possessions in the Philippines. We may not call them that, and it might be traitorous for me to even say it. But it is also known that it is possible that that's how it could be viewed. And they were able to secure a foothold in the Pacific and a ring of fortified islands, which we would have to take back by some system of amphibious assault. At the same time, fueling a war in Europe that it had gotten itself into. Hitler had done us a favor in a certain manner of speaking by declaring war on us first, therefore saved us a lot of trouble. So Britain had succeeded in getting us involved in World War II, which they had promised to do to begin with. And we fought out World War II, financed a lot of it on the Allied side, supplied a lot of it, provided a machine shop that was almost impervious to air and sea attack, and was able to come out of the other end of the war the richest nation in the world, the strongest militarily, and the only one with nuclear weapons. So, and we knew that they would work because we had used them. We had tested the plutonium implosion device first in the Los Alamos proving grounds in July of 1945, so we knew the implosion device would work. The uranium bomb, however, was a question mark. We understood that based on calculations and tests done, that it was more than likely that it would detonate the way it was supposed to. However, that would not be known until it actually exploded over Hiroshima on the morning of August 6, 1945. So we go on with that, and then there's a post-World War II period, and then the Korean War, which lasted from 50 to 53 as far as the shooting war was concerned. Then we have this long, long truce, which still goes on today, with problems between North and South Korea and the United States, which have yet to be resolved. I always end that period of time, 1931 to 1955, because by 1955, all of the problems associated directly with World War II had been addressed, even though unsatisfactorily and with clearly no end in sight. And we can take a look at the truce on the Korean Peninsula as a ceasefire in place, so to speak, as an example of what I'm talking about. It may even be said that World War II, the World War II era from that point of view is still going on. But, you know, as a person who is thinking independently on the issue and deciding where I want to read and research, I've decided in 1955. The Cold War, of course, overlaps with that. I look at the Cold War as beginning in 1944 with establishment of the world monetary system that would take hold after World War II at the meeting of Bretton Woods in 1944, and continuing on until 1991, or 92 actually, politically, and then militarily with the shutting down of our military installations on the Aleutian Islands, especially on Shemya Island, the listening post there, by May of 1995. So, you know, there's a lot of ground to cover here, and I think about it quite a lot, and it's just pretty much an explanation of what I'm talking about when I talk about the World War II era. Now, in future videos, I'll go into more detail on that, get away from this endless war as I gather more information on it, put together something that's a little bit better informed than what I've been doing, which is basically venting my spleen. Then I'll talk more about that. But with that, I'm going to wish you all a good morning and a happy holiday season. And hopefully we can live in peace someday. We might want to learn what that's like. What do you think?